September, and hope you had a good summer break, and looking forward to the work of the autumn. We'll go to agenda 1. Any apologies? No apologies. Second, declaration of interest.
Members are reminded of the need to declare any personal and prejudicial interest in the business of today's meeting. If a member has a personal interest only, then they may proceed to take part in the debate and any vote. If a member has a personal and prejudicial interest, then they must depart the meeting for the time that matter is being discussed. If any member has a personal and prejudicial interest that they haven't previously declared, they'll also need to complete a declaration of interest form, which is available online.
Thank you, Gary, for that. Does anybody want to declare an interest? No. Thank you. Urgent matters? No urgent matters. Right, before we go to the minutes of the meeting of the 27th of July 21, first of all, for accuracy, page 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. For matters arising, page 7, page 8, page 9.
Leader, just on.
Yeah, Mark.
Page 9, yeah, just on the Llangollen, the note that Councillor Tony Thomas brought up about the loading bay, and Councillor Feely brought it up, and it was supported by the lead member. Just any progress on that, because we know we had a lot of questions off residents on that, and it is in the minutes, please.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Brian, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, certainly, Leader. Yeah. The update on that is, as per the minutes, the officers got to work pretty quickly after the meeting and looked into the main point of discussion that was raised by Councillor Tony Thomas about recessing the bay outside the town hall in Castle Street. There was a meeting that was held on the High Street between Llangollen Asset Management Committee and the local members, and they did have an officer there from Denbighshire. That happened pretty quickly after the last cabinet meeting, and the result of that and other work that was carried out by other Denbighshire officers was that it was deemed that it was not feasible to put the recess bay totally recessed. And very briefly, the reasons for that: first and foremost, the tree that everyone's got a big interest and a lot of concern about. The roots of the tree. If you go to Llangollen and look round the base of the trunk of the tree, I think this might have been pointed out at the last cabinet meeting, that you can see that the pavings are raised a bit there, which are classic signs of tree roots, which we probably all know and acknowledge that. But there was an in-depth survey done, which showed that the roots were close to the surface. In some instances, roughly 150 mil, which is deemed not appropriate to carry out sort of work in those areas. It would have caused a problem potentially to the long-term longevity of the tree. So that's one of the reasons why the bay couldn't have been recessed. There were solutions that you could have looked at. Obvious one was to raise the height of the whole area, but again, if you sort of think about that briefly, raising the pavement level then chucks in a problem. One issue that then you've got to step down into the shops, the opposite end where you've raised it. It wouldn't be practical to raise the pavement over a wide area to give access to wherever you want access to. So the tree became a stumbling block to it, and you couldn't really feasibly say it was acceptable to do it using any technical solutions. the other big factor in it all, which was mentioned at the last cabinet, was the services that run along the pavement as they are today. And again, that was looked into in a bit more depth, and what would be required to reset those utility services, gas, electric, etc., wasn't deemed within the realms of, from a cost point of view, it would have been too expensive to get into those sort of realms to use those as solutions. And then it was even looked at to sort of shift the whole carriageway over to the east, but then yeah, that could have been a possibility. But then straight away you were hit with, first of all, you'd be narrowing the pavement on the east side of Castle Street, which actually would have gone against the fundamentals of the scheme, one of which is, you know, widen the pavement, better pedestrian access, etc., etc. And actually it could have brought into the equation the actual grant, that if you narrow the pavement, you're not sticking to what some of the small print was in the grant. So I could carry on for quite a long time. That's the sort of high level reasons why the officers came back to me. We had a couple of meetings over it. They've got a bit, obviously a lot more detail underneath what I've said, by way of surveys, by way of pictorials of where cables are on the west side of Castle Street. And so the conclusion was that it would not be feasible to recess that bay totally in, as per the discussions we had further to the question from Councillor Tony Thomas. But at the end of the day, when you look at the whole big shooting match, we have compromised. I've got a comms message which I'll be polishing up after cabinet, and that'll be released later on today. We did compromise in a lot of areas, and that was included at the last cabinet meeting. The actual loading bay on Castle Street, we have compromised there. It will be a loading bay. It will be a pop and shop facility, 30 minutes. So we've done a lot. This request was just a little bit too far. Not going to please everybody, I accept that. But at the end of the day, it's a good project. We've made the right decision to go with it. And in the majority of cases, people, residents, businesses, the benefits outweigh any of what people might see as the downsides.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. That's clear, and I'm really pleased that officers and yourself did look at haste with the suggestion from Tony on that, and your answer was pretty clear on that it wasn't feasible. So that should suffice for today on this particular item. Are you okay with that, Mark? Okay, thank you. We'll continue. Page 11, matters arising in a minute. Page 11.
Meirig yma.
Meirig, yeah.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you very much, Leader. On page 11, and thank you, Mr. Leader, you said that you would look into what I raised, the comment I made. It's the little paragraph about the Senedd. Can you just expand on that for me? When you say it's on page 11, the paragraph at the top of the page in English. Councillor Meirig Davies voiced his support for the scheme. He queried whether reference to Welsh Government in the Welsh report should be changed to Senedd. And it says that you would look into it. Well, I haven't looked into it, but I'm sure that the answer is quite easy, that it is Senedd now, and we should include that in every report that's put before the council from now on. Gary, I don't know whether you want to respond to that as well. Well, there is a difference between the Senedd and the Welsh Government. The Senedd is the body that makes the legislation and the government does the administration. So there is a difference. So I will check the contexts where the words Welsh Government were used, but there is a difference between the Senedd and Welsh Government. Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Mr. Leader. I will leave it in Gary's capable hands. Thank you very much, Merrick. Page 11.
Okay, will someone propose that they're correct, please? Second. Everybody in agreement? Nobody against? Okay, thank you. Right, we'll go to agenda item 5, strategy for the prevention and detection of fraud, corruption and bribery and the fraud response plan. Julian, please.
Chair, just before I start on that report, I was a little bit slow on urgent items, being able to find my raise hand button, and I'm not sure whether this is appropriate or not, and I'm sure Gary will tell me that if it's not. It's just that I heard that this morning the very sad news that Edna Pomeroy, who many members will know through work with the member area groups, very sadly has passed away. I just thought that the cabinet should acknowledge that and pass on their best wishes to her family.
Yeah,
I'll second that. I agree, Julian.
that's fine. Thank you, Julian, for highlighting that to us. We all knew Edna, didn't we? She was Britain's officer for Denbighshire. She worked closely with us and all the mags, I think.
Yeah, she did.
Brilliant, very friendly person, and it is very, very sad news. And thank you, Julian, for reminding us of that.
Okay, so thank you, Chair, for that. So the paper in front of you today covers a couple of points in relation to fraud, corruption, and bribery. As I'm sure you're all aware, as a significant public body which has responsibility for a significant element of public purse spending, we have a clear responsibility to protect that funding. There were 2 documents in the pack today. There's an updated strategy for prevention and detection of fraud, corruption and bribery. And the second element is what is essentially a new operational fraud response plan. It is important that we keep up to date with changes that go on. Unfortunately, people who do try to defraud, that technology moves on apace, and we need to make sure that we have our processes in place to deal with that. And thankfully, and hopefully I'm not tempting fate here, but thankfully there have, in Denbighshire, there have been very few instances over the years of fraud and the like. The documents that are in front of you also only form part of our
Julian, you have to switch your screen off, please, Julian.
It shouldn't be my end.
Right, okay.
I will turn it off, but
we couldn't quite make out what you were saying, so we'll try the screen off for the time being.
Okay. Okay, that's a surprise, seeing as I'm now upgraded my signal, but there we go. How far back do you want me to go?
Just a sentence.
Okay. These documents form part of a wider counter-fraud framework and need to be read in conjunction with our code of conduct, financial regulations, and whistleblowing policies. And together they represent a valuable tool for management in being able to deal with any allegations along these lines. The documents have been based upon the Fighting Fraud and Corruption Locally 2020 document, which was guidance issued to all local authorities. So we've obviously taken that into account in redrafting the documentation that we have. And sets out our requirements. But of course, this isn't just about detecting and investigating events after the fact, but the intention is that we should be proactive in terms of deterring any occurrences as well. The fraud response plan, which is the second document in the pack, is designed to bring together a number of existing policies and also provide alignment with our already existing HR policies. So the two documents, Appendix 1 is the strategy. So it outlines our objectives, the measures we'll take, responsibilities within the organisation. And I'm not going to go through it in any great detail. I'm sure you may have some questions, and I've got Gary and Lisa Lovegrove here if there's anything technical. And Appendix 2 is the response plan, which, as I say, is quite a detailed methodology for responding and dealing with any allegations when made. These papers have been to governance and audit a few weeks ago, and whilst it strictly speaking doesn't have to come to Cabinet for approval, it was felt that in order to raise the profile, it should come to our executive body, which is in Denbighshire's case is Cabinet, in order as an awareness raising issue. So that is why it's in front of you today. I think that's probably, as way of an introduction, all I wanted to say, Leader. I don't know whether Gary or Lisa wanted to add anything that I've missed or correct anything that I've said in error. And then we'll go to questions.
I think Gary's okay. Lisa, did you want to add anything?
I think that was a really good introduction. I think all I could add really is that it's coming here as well, because a key part of counter-fraud arrangements is setting the right culture throughout the organisation, and part of that obviously is setting the tone at the top, which obviously you can't get much higher. So so yourselves really to set that tone in terms of the high ethical standards that the council has to apply during its as part of its behaviours. I think that's all I could add really. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I totally agree. We need to raise the awareness in terms of this particular item. I do have a couple of questions before I just open up the page 15, the wellbeing impact. The requirements are that there's work to be done to engage with members. I'd be interested to know how you intend doing that, just for us to understand. And also, I think there was another one on page 30 in terms of external. I can understand how you can manage things internally and create the culture within the organisation. How do you monitor and evaluate the impact of the strategy on external partners? I'm just interested to know what that entails. So it's just two questions from me on that, please.
Okay, thank you, Leader. I'll try and make an effort on the stab at the first one, and Lisa can or Gary can pick up on that. I'll pass it across to officers for the second one, if that's okay. Hopefully you can still hear me. I've put my camera back on. If you can't, just wave or something, and I'll turn it off again.
Julian, you're getting value for money now because we can see you and hear you, so that's good.
Yes, I'm trying that. Mind you might want me to turn the camera off, but that's a different matter. In terms of members, as I say, it obviously went to governance and audit and has come to Cabinet today, and all members have access to both. So in that respect, all members have.
Julian.
Okay, no.
Sorry, Julian, can't hear.
Yeah, okay, I can't understand this, but never mind. As I say, all members have access to the paper, so you should see all that. I'm quite happy, if it's felt appropriate, to send out the documents, if approved today, to all members after this meeting to highlight that. But apart from that, it would probably be that as long as they're aware, should they need to utilise it. I think that's probably the involvement from members. But I don't know whether Gary or Lisa would like to add to the member part of it. And in terms of working with partners, I will hand that over to officers, please, to answer.
Thank you, Julian. I'm looking to Gary or Lisa. Lisa?
I think the plan is for the strategy and the fraud response plan to be published on the website, so they'll be accessible there first of all. In terms of staff, it's setting up e-learning module, whether that will be added onto the existing whistleblowing. But I'm not sure whether e-learning has that been able to be rolled out to members yet. If not, I think it'd be worthwhile putting on a session that members can join in and just provide an awareness raising on it, particularly with the following the elections next year. Will be a worthwhile session for people to understand their roles in line with the strategy. The second question is a good one in terms of partners and how we monitor what goes on there. I know for key strategic partners which are managed as part of the contract, I'm thinking Civica, where our revs and bends, that we oversee that arrangement as part of our internal audit, and we have a focus on counter fraud arrangements when we do some of our audits, so we know that's picked up there. But elsewhere there is a partnership toolkit that was updated last year, and as part of that there's a requirement for an annual health check as a self-assessment by key partners, and that's got certain aspects as part of that health check, such as financial monitoring, governance in terms of standard of behaviour and codes of conduct, and compliance. So it should be picked up there. It's still early days in terms of that toolkit, but it's making sure that that's being completed by the necessary partners will be the key steps for this year.
Okay, that's good. Did you want to add to that? Thank you, Lisa, for that.
No, I just think in terms of the strategy generally and the engagement with members and officers, as you've heard, we think we have good controls, but you can never be complacent. You've always got to be vigilant. In terms of e-learning for members, that's still a work in progress, but progress is being made. And I agree with Lisa that in the new council, this is one of the things that we want to raise awareness of early on for the new members. And what members really need to know is that there is a strategy, there is a plan, and if they have any suspicions or concerns, they can go to that plan and they know who to contact.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you. I'll open up questions now from cabinet members on this. Mark?
Leader, please. Yeah, I'll turn the camera off just in case. Yeah, so
Mark, sorry, Mark, can't hear you at all, Mark.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
That's a yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll keep it quick. So we've been asked to endorse this. So will this also go to Denbighshire Leisure? And how do they fit into this? And also the whistleblowing is really important. Are we happy with that now, or do we think it's going to need some more work on it? So that just those two questions, please. But good document. Thank you.
Gary?
Yeah, in terms of the whistleblowing policy, that was reviewed relatively recently, I think, in the last couple of years. And we provide a report annually to the Governance and Audit Committee on the operation of the whistleblowing policy, the number of any concerns there are that have been raised over the previous period, and as well whether there are any themes or issues arising across the council that would be a cause for concern. Over recent years, the numbers have been relatively low, and there haven't been, if you like, thematic issues that have arisen from those. But we have been promoting the whistleblowing policy. So, it's really important that if people have a concern, they know that they can raise it, and they know that it's going to be dealt with appropriately. And, we'd encourage people who feel that there's something wrong to be able to do that. In terms of DLL, this is the council strategy for the prevention and detection of fraud, corruption and bribery. And clearly, as a company that works closely with the council and is owned by the council, we'd want them, and I'm sure that they are already aware of the arrangements that we have and the way in which we would tackle any fraud.
Okay, thank you. Okay with that, Mark?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? No, I can't see any hands up. No. Fine. Any questions from non-cabinet members? No. Okay. Thank you. Julian, can you come to the recommendation, please?
Yes, I can, Chair. So recommendation 3.1 is the Cabinet endorsed the revised strategy for the prevention and detection of fraud, corruption and bribery and associated fraud response plan, and provide support to ensure that measures are embedded throughout the organisation.
Thank you, Julian. That's been moved. Someone second that? Thank you, Mark. Everybody in agreement? Is there anybody against? I can't see the screen, so I'm assuming everybody is for that. Okay, thank you. That's been passed. Agenda item 6, Annual Treasury Management Reports 2020-21. Julian?
Okay, I don't know whether to tempt fate and leave the camera on or take it off. I'll take it off as probably the easiest to be on the safe side. This chair is our regular update on Treasury management for 2020-2021. The main documents contained within Appendix 1 to your report and gives, as usual, some general background on the economic environment. We then go through covering our borrowing activity over the last 12-month period. And you'll see that in net terms that we essentially had £8 million of debt that matured during the course of the year. We have undertaken some temporary borrowing, which we usually do. We are, as I think I've reported in previous reports to this, a borrowing authority. A few years back, we used to borrow from ourselves, but now we are an externally borrowing authority. The average rate you'll see of our borrowing has increased slightly over the last 12 months from 3.82% to 3.95%. The report then covers areas of about investment, who we can invest with, who our approved counterparties are. And again, I would just like to reinforce what I've said in previous reports. We focus very much on, with all our investments, primarily on the security. So how secure are the counterparties that we use? Then liquidity, how quickly we can get it back, and only then would we consider yield. And again, I know this is a bit of a broken record, but I think it is important to highlight that the yields we've been getting for some considerable time are essentially non-existent. The next section is a confirmation that we have complied with all of the performance indicators that we set for ourselves during the course of the year, and that we can confirm that probably follows on quite well from the last paper, that no money laundering activity went on either during the course of the year. Annex B to the report actually lists the performance indicators in detail, and I'll only highlight a couple of those, but I'm sure there may well be questions, but ones that the members always tend to need to focus on is the number 2, which is the ratio of borrowing to revenue costs, which is essentially how much of our annual revenue budget we have tied up in servicing debt. And you'll see on the in the table there that on the general account, that's currently around about 6.65%, and on the HRA 35.9%. That's obviously higher because part of the role of the rental income that we get from the HRA is to reinvest in the works that we're carrying out. We are well within the capital financing requirements, authorised limit and operational boundary that we set and is set each year by council in February time. And the final one I just wanted to highlight was number 6, which is just a breakdown of when our loans actually mature. And you'll see that most of our loans mature over 10 years in the future. and on a rolling basis, our advisors obviously give us advice in terms of reprofiling that to make sure that no single amount, heavy amount falls due in any one year that would put pressure on the budget. And then finally, Annex C is one that probably everybody, including myself, probably needs to have a look at, and that's the glossary. Because if there's any one area of work where there are a lot of highly technical terms and abbreviations, treasury management is probably the area. So that's the glossary of what's actually being referred to in the document, if anybody's not sure. I think that's probably all I needed to highlight as an introduction, Leader. I don't know whether Steve's got anything he wanted to elaborate on. I'm sure he will have.
Okay, check. Yeah, no, not really. You've covered everything as usual, Julian. The only thing to point out is that, this report is around giving you assurance that we're keeping within our limits, keeping within the prudential indicators that we've agreed. It's quite a slimmed down report, and just gives you an overall, the idea is to give you an overall assurance around our treasury management activity. And I think, answer any questions on the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you both for that. I'll open up for questions from members. I can't see any hands raised. Shout, Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Yeah, just a question for Steve. You might think it's a bit mischievous, this, but it's not. What's your general overall feeling, Steve, about treasury management going forward? Can you give us a gauge feeling about it, how you feel, how it might go, outside factors that might affect it? What's your gut feeling on it all, Steve?
The main factors that govern it will be our ambition and our desire for capital expenditure. We're a borrowing authority, so we don't have any investment decisions to make. So basically, our treasury management is, as Julian has said, is around making sure our cash flow is covered. And that's obviously day-to-day decisions to make sure that we have enough money in the bank account to pay for wages and to pay our suppliers on the dates that goes out. And we don't have any spare cash for sort of investment. So really the treasury management decisions are around the funding our capital ambitions. As I did a presentation to council briefing before the recess, which sort of sets out some of our thinking around that and developing a medium-term capital strategy, which will impact on our borrowing, and that's the balance that we'll need to strike. As far as things such as interest rates, there is no, we have regular meetings with Arlen Close. There is no sign particularly of any increase in bank interest rates going forward. I think you've all probably, as much as I have, seen the things in the press, obviously that the inflation figures might increase, but the actual bank interest rate is to do with the economy. And unless we see, a bubble, another, the heating up of the economy, which isn't to do with just COVID coming back, not COVID coming back, the economy recovering from COVID, which obviously means inflation and big growth figures, but those are sort of temporary, and that's getting us back to normal. So there isn't anything underlying that would impact those 1%, low bank interest rates, which means the borrowing rates will be low going forward, which is why the UK government is borrowing for capital purposes still. And then it's an assessment then for Cabinet, for Council, to make that decision along with advice from senior officers around what is affordable for us to keep up with the capital needs of the Council and our projects that we might just want to deliver, and what we think is affordable. And Julian, pointed out that important ratio, the non-HRA ratio, and the reason why we split out, well, obviously we have statutory reporting guidance, which means we have to split it out apart from anything else. But the important thing is with the non-HRA ratio compared to the HRA ratio, and you'll see that the gearing's a lot more on it's 2.1, page 62 of the report. For HRA, that borrowing is backed up by the income from tenants, so the gearing is a lot higher, so therefore you can borrow a lot more because you've got a fixed income that is definitely coming in. With the local authority, the non-HRA, obviously we're reliant on local government settlements and council tax levels mainly. Obviously we have fees and charges as well, but it's mainly government funding and the council tax that funds us, and that can go up as well as down, as we've known over the last 10 to 15 years. So it's not quite as secure as the HRA funding. So that's that 6.65% figure. That's the one we look at really, because that's the you can look at it as if, you know, for your own finances, where you know, how much do you want to actually spend on paying back your loans, including interest, and how much do you want to pay on day-to-day expenditure, and that's the equivalent of that calculation for us as a council. How much are we paying for past decisions, and how much are we actually paying for delivering services on a day-to-day basis for the current residents? And it's a balance, because we do need to spend money on capital, otherwise, you know, the roads fall to pieces, etc. So, you know, it is a balance. We do need to spend on capital, and those are the sorts of discussions that will need to be had over the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay, Steve, thank you for that. Okay with that, Brian? Yeah.
Yeah, fine. I picked up on that little highway word there, Steve, but we'll pick that up again. So I can use the word comfortable then, Steve. You're comfortable. Is that the right word I can use?
I'm never you know, I don't know what to say about that.
Big word from the finance word comfortable. They're always using that in the financial word comfortable.
Oh, well, there you go.
Okay,
currently content might be a phrase. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, thank you.
I think, Brian, we should be assured that the 151 officer is aware of all eventualities and is dealing with it. And I think it's a fine line between ambition and dealing with pressures. And we've always been an ambitious authority. We've pushed the boundaries of what we could be achieving, but we're also aware of emerging pressures. And from my perspective, I think we need to be really clear about the impact of Brexit, be them positive or negative. The COVID, we're seeing issues with the gas supplies now and the impact that will have. When furlough goes, what does that have on the economy? There's a lot of things in there which are not necessarily in our control. But I think as members, we should be assured that our monitoring or finance officer and monitoring officer, but finance officer is well aware of the challenges that we face. So I think it's a really good report, I would say. Okay, Mark, would you like to come in, please? Mark, I'm not sure if you start speaking.
No, sorry, you disappeared on me there. You're back now. Can you hear me okay, Leader?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I just want to touch on the wellbeing impact assessment, because it asks us to make sure we've read it and we understand it. So just a couple of questions on that. We've got the assessment, impact assessment, and the summary for each area. So the sustainability, we've got 2 stars out of 4. Are we happy with that, or is there more we can do now or in the future? And the comments on the following documents on the low carbon and some other environment, the biodiversity, etc. So we've done a lot of work on that, and Councillor Thomas and Councillor Jones has. Are we being fair to ourselves there? Because we put a lot of time and money in. So could we be more positive in them areas? Because at the moment we're not selling ourselves, I feel. Thank you.
Okay. Julian or Steve, do you want to respond to that?
Steve,
I'm happy to.
yeah, I was going to say, Steve, it's probably one more for you.
It is a difficult one, because I think on any finance report, so for example, putting up council tax as part of the budget report, there's a wellbeing impact assessment for that. Now, that money is used, all the council tax that's collected is used to fund all our services. So, I mean, technically, I suppose we could give ourselves lots of 4 stars for funding all the activity within the council by producing a balanced budget. That's, you know, probably one extreme. So we do try to do the wellbeing impact assessment very much sort of from a small c conservative point of view, and not trying to, but, you know, our treasury management function does back up. I mean, you might have seen in the press where it goes wrong, and if it goes wrong, all services are impacted. However, in the treasury, in the wellbeing impact assessment, we try not to sort of you know, to strip out that side of it, and to concentrate actually on the activity itself. The other thing is that you know, it's about planning, and I think because treasury management is a ongoing activity, and I think that's where the 2 stars come from. You know, we don't have a program board, we don't have you know, we report to all the statutory groups that we need to, such as Governance Assurance Committee, Cabinet and Council, in various different reports. I think we probably miss out on some of that normal project management types ticks that you would get if it was a one-off project, but it's not, it's embedded in everything we do. So that's probably why it's come out on a 2 for that. It is difficult on this scoring, but I think, you know, generally it's a couple of positives, and you know, other than that, we hope that services don't have to think about us and treasury management. You know, if we didn't get our staff paid, that would be when they'd notice us. So the idea is that we're in the background making sure that everything ticks over and works and everyone gets paid.
Okay, thank you for that, Steve. Okay with that, Mark?
Sorry, I just asked a question on we haven't got comments on the biodiversity and environment.
Yeah,
I think we are doing good work, so I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, I think that the point is that we're not doing it in the treasury management section. So that's what I was trying to say, is that actually, yes, obviously everything that treasury management allows the council to work. It allows us to carry out our revenue activities. It allows us to pay our staff. It allows us to fund capital investment. So we could throw all that into the welfare impact assessment. However, we felt, you know, this is the feeling that actually the specific projects should talk about that, rather than our treasury management function, which facilitates those projects. I do understand what you mean, Mark, that without a treasury management function, then you wouldn't be able to invest in the Carbon Zero project, etc. And you know, I'm proud of the role that finance plays in facilitating those projects. But yeah, that's just the balance we've struck. I do take your point though.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're underselling ourselves there, but I'll take it on board. But I think we could sell ourselves better, and it's a better message. But I'll go with whatever you're comfortable with. No,
I take your views on board, Mark, and we'll have a look at it. We'll review it next time we do it, see if we can include something. But I'm just trying to, yeah. Thank you.
Graham.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. I only wanted to come in at the end if all members have had their opportunity to ask questions about the report, just from a kind of chief exec's position.
Okay, that's fine.
Is that okay? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, okay. I'll finish with members first and I'll come back to you, Graham.
Yeah, thank you. If you would. Thank you, Leader. Thank you.
Okay. Any members of Cabinet with further comments or questions? I can't see any hands raised. Okay. Are there any non-Cabinet members? No. Okay. Thank you, Graham. The floor is yours.
Diolch, Leader. Thank you. Just a quick word. I think you discussed there about kind of capital decisions, and I think that's important. As Steve says, we get that balance right. And you've said, and others have said, we've also got a new corporate plan that we'll be starting to work towards. So that'll be interesting around are what we want to invest in there in terms of capital. And, you know, my advice would be to retain our ambition, but of course it must be affordable, clearly. And we must ensure that we fund our core functions and associated pressures, as you've said. So there's always that balancing act for us in terms of wanting to invest, particularly in some capital schemes and retaining ambition, but also understanding we've got some core functions that we do need to ensure we fund appropriately, particularly where there's some pressures, etc. So that will come out in the wash over the coming weeks and months, I'm sure, particularly with the new corporate plan. So there'll be some interesting work there. The only other thing I want to say, Leader, if I can, it's an excellent report that we've got in front of us. It's really clear. I think we're lucky that we've got Steve and Julian, our 151 and lead member for finance. We've got two excellent people there, officer and member, who work really closely together. And that's obviously part of my mantra. Really important that the heads of service and senior responsible officers work really closely with our lead members. And I know that happens with Steve and Julian. So that's an excellent place to start from. And they always give me full confidence, and I always feel really assured when I look at these budget reports and the way they're presented, because they clearly work really well together and know their stuff. So in that terms of assurance, which is what this report is really seeking at the end of the day, I certainly as Chief Exec take a lot of comfort and a lot of assurance from the work that Julian and Steve and all the team, of course, put into the work that behind the scenes. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you, Leader Dale. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Graham, and I would second that as well. Really good team efforts on this one. I don't see any more comments or questions. So, Julian, can you come to the recommendation, please?
I'll try it with the camera on. The recommendation 3.1, that members note the performance of the Council's Treasury management function during 2020-21 and its compliance with the required prudential indicators as reported in the annual Treasury Management Report in Appendix 1. And 3.2, that the Cabinet confirms that it has read, understood and taken account of the wellbeing impact assessment in Appendix 2 as part of its consideration. I'm very glad Mark has read it.
Okay, that's been moved. Someone second that?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Brian. Everybody in agreement? Nobody against? Okay, thank you for that. That's been moved. Agenda item 7. Council House external enveloping and energy efficiency framework and mini competition award. Tony, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'll switch my camera off just for the bandwidth problems. Okay, so I've got, I think I've got Glenn Forstick with me today to answer the any technical problems, but we're here today to seek approval toward the recently tendered external enveloping framework to procure services required to deliver major external repairs to the Council's housing stock. And also to seek approval to tender the first 2 lots from the 4-year framework required to maintain the condition of the Council's housing stock in line with the Welsh Housing Quality Standard and to tender the first 2 phases. So a little bit of background stuff. Denbighshire Housing, we have about 3,400 properties. Since 2004, we've carried out many repairs to the stock to achieve this Welsh Housing Quality Standard. So making sure we meet the current needs. And this year they have revised their standards, so we're looking to meet their future needs for this Welsh Housing Qualified Standard. It's they've increased a lot of things. Last year, Welsh Government launched what was called the Optimised Retrofit Programme, ORP. This is quite a significant programme. The idea includes facilities of enhanced energy efficiency and off-grid energy solutions. In the last round, Denbighshire obtained £2 million in grant funding and delivered a programme of retrofit installations to 55 properties in Melodon. The next 4-year programme will deliver to other areas of housing stock. The new framework will deliver significant community benefits to local economies, apprentices and training opportunities. There's 2 lots this year. The first lot of 50 properties is going to be in Ridwin Drive, Rill, and there will be a further 50 hard to heat properties across several areas in the county. Each lot is at £1 million, and with this ORP funding, it will take the project over 2 million, which hence we require cabinet approval. So we're meeting the corporate priorities, increasing energy efficiency of the housing stock, and our housing priority that everyone is supported to live in homes that meet their needs. Okay, I'll pass over to Glyn if he's available to give us some further detail, please.
Hi, Tony. Hi, Chair. Sorry, it's already Glyn, unfortunately, off sick today. Can everyone hear me?
Glenn, that's not very clear. I'm sorry about that. I don't know what's going on today.
Sorry, that was Dave. That was Dave Laurie.
Laurie.
He was saying that Glyn's actually off sick at the moment, but he's he broke up quite badly there, Dave.
Okay, so is that any better?
Yeah, that's better, Dave. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that, Tony. Yeah. In essence, this is just a request for Cabinet to approve us letting a 4-year framework for capital works to our housing stock. I think it's asking for not just that, but in the first instance to forego the 5-day call-in period for scrutiny, because we'd like to get the lot 1 tender out as quickly as possible. We are a little bit behind with it. I must say, I think that's not desperate. I'm sure we could make up the time somewhere else if we absolutely needed to, but it's included in the recommendation. The second recommendation is that should we receive retrofit funding from Welsh Government, which we have applied for, we would like to include that in the initial tenders. And if the funding comes through, we're asking that should the contract value go over £2 million, then instead of it needing to come back to Cabinet, the decision is delegated to Steve Gadd, being the Head of Finance and Property, in consultation with Gary, Julian, to allow us to crack on and basically get on with the works. We've only received the Welsh Government application forms today. If last year is anything to go by, we should receive a decision towards the end of October. But we can't, unfortunately, hang on with our capital works programme because we just wouldn't get the enveloping scheme done. Sorry, just to explain a bit, we're going out to tender on our capital works, which is enveloping schemes, new roofs, new render, new fascia boards, gutters and things like that. The retrofit funding would allow us to install PV panels on the roofs, battery storage, inverters, and additional external wall insulation. I think we're fairly confident we'll get it, but until we actually get the decision, we will be we're tied really to the original specification, which we anticipate coming out at around 1 million. If we get the retrofit funding, it's probably going to double that, so there is a chance that it would go over the £2 million threshold for Cabinet approval. I'll be quiet now. I think I've probably babbled on enough, but if anyone has any queries or questions, then I'm more than happy to try and respond.
Just thank you, Dave. Just on that, is that as referred to in recommendation 3.3, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, that's clear. That's good. Thank you. Okay, Julian?
I think Bobby was first, actually, Hugh.
Sorry, Bobby?
Okay, thank you. I've got no problem with the recommendations, and well done on what, you know, it's jolly good what's been done already with regard to our housing. I just wanted to ask a question, which hopefully you'll be able to answer, David. When there is either a row of houses or a block of flats, whatever, where it's interspersed with council properties and private properties. I'm thinking of one particular block of flats which looks amazing. Now you've done it inside and out on my patch. How do you sort out, how do you do it all when some of them are privately owned and some of them are council? How does that work?
Generally, we will only do our council-owned houses. That's what we get the funding for. We do have discussions with the private tenants, private owners, and we can, because we do so many units, it brings the unit cost down. But the best we can do really is offer that unit cost to private owners, and it is a reasonably high cost. We're talking just for the re-roofing works, the render, the roof line work. We're probably talking about £15,000 a house, and that doubles if we apply the retrofit funding as well. So there isn't huge take up, I'm afraid. It is quite an expensive process.
But I am a sort of thinker. I've got in my head now a block of flats which looks beautiful. The roof's been done, it's all been re-rendered, it's been done inside and out. And I know some are owned by people and some are council flats. And I'm just, you know, is there a problem? Is there a problem that council property would get it done for nothing and private owners would not?
I think with flats, with blocks of flats, we have a landlord's responsibility to make repairs to the external envelope anyway. So that it's something that we would do for the benefit of our tenants, and yes, it would benefit private owners as well.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bobby. Julian?
Yes, I mean the works that were carried out in Melodon look really good, and I look forward to the next tranche being rolled out. I was just so I fully support the recommendations. My only question, I suppose, to Dave is you're asking. I know you say it's not desperate, but you would prefer to have the lot one without the call-in period. I was just wondering why it was just lot one and not lot two. Is it because lot two is more dependent on the external funding?
Essentially, yes. Yeah. We want to get lot one out as soon as we can. Lot two would predominantly be subject to the Welsh Government funding. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Brian? Hello, Brian. You got your hand up, do you know? Raise, you're either on mute or...
Yeah, turn my camera off now. Yeah, just an observation and a question on the recommendations. 4 of the 6 companies, oh, sorry, 2 of the 6 companies are local and the other 4 are from out the area. Can I ask the question? Obviously, I understand it'll be that's worked out because of the price and the quality. Do we give companies that are not successful on tenders? Do we give them? Have we got the time to give them a bit of an insight and not just well, you know, you were 5% out on your tender price there. A little bit more meat on why they lost out, which on future tenders can give them a bit of a steer on it, and in particular local companies. So 2 questions. Obviously, I support the recommendation. I've seen the work in Melodon. It is great. That's already been said. Why do you think we only had 2 local companies that were successful? Is there anything we think we could do without bogging down officers with too much work to certainly give local companies, and I suppose any companies that tender, and we might already do it, I'll apologise, but reasons why, a bit of a wash hands on what they'd have to do to be successful on any future tenders? I suppose that's one for Mr. Lowry.
Thank you, Brian. Dave?
Yeah, Brian. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, we do try and work with all contractors who express an interest. That's prior to the tender and afterwards. If they want some feedback, then we're more than happy to give it. You know, procurement rules mean that we have to tender on sale to Wales, and that's not a restricted procurement process. I wasn't involved in the selection process, but obviously procurement were, and they're happy that everything was followed. So I couldn't comment on why more local companies didn't make the list, but I can certainly ask Lynn when he's better to give us some comments on that. But certainly more than happy to work with contractors from anywhere in terms of how they might have a better chance of getting on the list. But we do work with Business Wales during the tender process.
No, a number of years ago, Dave, if I can come back, Sell to Wales actually dealt with bidding on contracts for Sell to Wales. They had, in my view, this ridiculous formula where you had to have a combined overall yearly balance sheet sales figure, which was millions. And actually you were quoting for the contract that was only worth 6 figures. But your balance sheet had to show that you were turning over, you know, I think it was £30 million a year.
Right.
That's still in place, which...
Can you put the screen off, Brian? Sorry.
Yeah, how much did you capture that? Yeah, very quickly then I'll run through it again. A number of years ago, I dealt with Sell to Wales on tendering for contracts. Within the small print, you had to demonstrate that your turnover, I remember the figure, it was £30 million a year. The contract we were bidding for was only something like 100k a year, and it was absolutely ridiculous. And I just wondered if red tape like that is still in that Sell to Wales small print, which would hamper local businesses when they're looking at it like, yeah. So without labouring it, I'm happy with the recommendations, but if we could just look into that, I'd be interested on any feedback without bogging you down with work, Dave. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Brian, for that. Okay, any other comments from cabinet members? No. Okay, Mary, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One or two things. Can I wish Glyn all the best for a speedy recovery? I know him. He is a very good officer for us. And very good morning, David Lorry. Under 3.1, comment has been made about the companies. With large companies, as central government has seen, running out of business, running out of money and winding up, can we be sure that the companies that we select are as sound as possible and won't cease trading before the contract ends? And I don't know whether I can get an answer for this question, but I can't see Morawell 8 Ffordd Glascoed. It's an empty property at the moment. I'm looking forward to it being refurbished to provide a home for a family again. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mary.
The first question in terms of the position of the companies which have been allocated the work in terms of sustainability and credibility.
Chair, perhaps I can come in on that one actually from a procurement standpoint.
Okay.
And you know, Steve or Gary or Dave might want to add. We would automatically do diligence. Try saying that 3 times quickly. On any companies that we're going to contract with. But that, of course, is I'll turn it off.
You don't have to say due diligence again.
Good. I'm not going to try it. No, we do that as a matter of course. However, of course, it's only a snapshot in time, and in a lot of cases, particularly where we've seen historically with some of these larger firms that have gone, they've actually had a very sound balance sheet right up until the day when they've gone bust, because it's all a cash flow issue rather than an actual asset issue. So you can never say that something like that won't happen, but we do take all reasonable precautions that we can, and checking credit ratings and all the rest of it. But that only ever is a snapshot in time at the time that you're actually doing it, and isn't a guarantee, as they say, of future performance.
Okay, thank you, Julian. Mae'r pwynt arall at ti codi, Meirig, yn rhywbeth lleol o fyrach sut ti'n wedi
The other
codi?
point you raised, Mary, is more local. Maybe you could raise that with officers with regard to the property in your ward. If I take it up with David, yes? Yes. Thank you very much for the responses.
Yeah, Leader, if I may.
Who? Yes.
I just want to get clarity, Dave, if I can, because there's examples of areas which obviously vacant houses are getting full refurbs and getting done. But there's also existing tenants who are only having sort of partial refurbs, which it's quite difficult when, you've got 4 houses in the same street being completely gutted and done up, and existing tenants having to cope or make do with what they've got, some cases 20 odd years. So what point does an existing tenant qualify for a full refurb and not partial? I just want a bit of clarity on that, because I've got an example, and if Glyn was here, he's been dealing with me on it. Is how do I answer a tenant of over 20 years that they are basically, if they want to improve their property, they have to do it themselves because they don't qualify for the scheme? I'm just trying to understand, what's the qualification point, please?
There is we've obviously got a planned capital programme, and that is based on condition surveys. I think where some of the confusion or some of the dissatisfaction might be coming in is that for a few days now, we've really upped our lettable standard, and the best way to deliver that on a day-to-day basis is via the voids work that we do. So when a property becomes empty, instead of just turning it around quickly and trying to get a tenant in, we do actually take some time now and try and deliver a real quality home. It's sometimes difficult to do that level of work when there's a tenant actually living in the property. I think the other thing to say is that obviously because of COVID, we have stepped back a little bit from completing internal works, which is generally kitchen and bathroom replacements. We will be kicking that back up again next year, but again, obviously because of the restrictions, we don't want to send several contractors into houses, putting them and the tenants at risk. But certainly in terms of if you've got any individual tenants who want to raise concerns, myself and Glyn are more than happy to work with you and them to discuss it and go through it. But there is a long-term capital programme for external enveloping and internal to keep us up to WHQS.
Yeah, Dave, I completely support the void work we're doing, and I was shown around a few weeks ago in a brand new refurb, somebody moving from a 3-bed into a flat, and the standard was absolutely superb. I just think maybe that we need to have some communication. It's difficult when there's some really good work. Bobby quoted earlier on about the flats in bottom of Greenfield Road in Ruthin. I mean, they look amazing. They look like a new build, and it's a credit to the work we've done. But then there's a state, for example, Maes Hafod in Ruthin, having a lot of refurbs done because properties coming empty, etc. And existing tenants are not sure where they sit in the programme. So I just think we need to have some comms to give reassurance of, we are going to get to you eventually. I don't know if we can do that, so there is a constant message throughout Denbighshire going to these tenants who, feel aggrieved they've paid for years and nothing's happening.
Yeah, that's fine. I think we can speak with Vicky Shenton and Jeff and start including things like that in the newsletter. We have a newsletter that goes to tenants. It is quite general, obviously because it goes to the whole of Denbighshire. But yeah, if we can start at least giving some indication of what the programs might be, and maybe even if you're getting a lot of concerns raised by your tenants or your constituents, we could send something out on an area basis, so it's a little bit more specific.
Yeah, I'd really appreciate that, Dave. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, Anhil. Okay, no more comments on this? No. Okay, Tony, could you take us through the recommendations, please?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I will do. Apologies, as quite long, the recommendations, but I'll do my best. Recommendation 3.1, to award the framework contract to 6 contractors as detailed who were successful in fulfilling the required criteria following a recent tender exercise. I won't name them. 3.2, to tender the first 2 lots of the framework via mini competition this financial year on a price-only basis, given that all contractors have met the required quality criteria. Giving an exemption for the 5-day cooling period on lot 1 only immediately, and reduce further contract mobilization delays. 3.3, to delegate the decision to increase the contract values of lot 1 and lot 2 in the event of Welsh Government's optimised retrofit funding being successfully obtained, and if the revised contract value exceeds 2 million, to the Head of Finance and Property in consultation with the monitoring officer and lead member for Finance, Performance and Strategic Budgets. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. That's been moved. Someone second that. Bobby's.
Happy to second.
That's been said. Bobby seconded. Everybody in agreement with this? Nobody against? Okay, that's been moved. Thank you, Tony, for that. We'll plod on. Agenda item 8, construction of 15 apartments for social rent at the DELL and PRESTATYN contract award. Tony again, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Again, I'll probably switch my video off this time a little bit longer. Okay, so this report summarises the process undertaken during the procurement exercise and recommends the award of the contract to appoint a principal contractor to construct 15 apartments for social rents at the DELL in PRESTATYN. So we require today a decision to enable the contractor to be awarded the contract for the construction of these apartments. So a bit of background on this. Cabinet on December 30th, 2019, that DCC appointed contractor notice with an estimated value. Then we were talking £4 million on the Sell to Wales procurement portal. There's a deadline of submission on the 2nd of March, which we slightly extended it for various firms to the 19th of April. 4 tenders were received. Scoring matrix was 70% on price, 30% on quality. Obviously, we have to take into account our corporate priorities that everyone is supported to live in homes that meet their needs. This also delivers on climate and ecological change strategy adopted by the Council on the 23rd of February 2021. It's low carbon, renewable energy and heat technologies, avoiding hydrocarbons. So I think again, I've got Mark who will supply any technical details on this. So Mark, did you want to add anything to that, please?
Thank you, Tony. Yes, just to say that this project's been a long time coming, and it's unfortunately was about ready to go out to tender just when the pandemic hit. So it's taken a long time to bring it to a situation where we've got a contract ready to be awarded. So it'll deliver 15 much needed apartments in PRESTATYN, which will address the requirement for housing need for this particular group of tenants. And we've been fortunate in also receiving some funding from Welsh Government to help us deliver this scheme. So all in all, it's a very positive development in terms of delivering the housing programme.
Okay, thank you.
I forgot to add that the actual estimates, the contract now is coming at 3 million, so it's coming a fair bit cheaper than what we thought.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Mark, for that. Very clear, and you're right, it has been a long time coming, this one, since it was first discussed. Julian, did you want to add anything? Your name is on the report. Did you want to add anything to?
Yeah, my name's on the report from the procurement aspect. No, I fully support the recommendations, and I fully support the. So I'm assuming Tony's proposing, so I'm quite happy to second the recommendations when we get to that stage.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions or comments from cabinet members? No. Okay. Any comments or questions from non-cabinet members? No, I can't hear or see a hand up. That's fine. Tony, can you come to the recommendation, please?
Yes, certainly, Leader. Recommendations 3.1, that Cabinet approve the award of a contract to this contractor as per the contract award recommendation report in Appendix 1. 3.2, that Cabinet confirms that it is read, understood, and taken account of the wellbeing impact assessments, which is Appendix 2, as part of its consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. That's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Nobody against? Okay, that's been moved. Thank you, Tony, for that. Agenda item 9, finance reports. Julian?
Okay, I'll take my camera off. Hopefully that will mean you can hear me. The regular monthly update here on our finance, revenue and capital. In terms of revenue, our forecast overspend for the year has increased slightly from around about 750,000 last month's report to 835,000 this month. In terms of the COVID funding streams, we're continuing to claim where appropriate from those Welsh Government funding sources. We've got claims outstanding at the moment for the first quarter in terms of increased expenditure for around about £2 million, and for loss of income of around about £1.9 million. Expenditure is still being incurred in terms of that. We would expect that as more and more areas go back to normal, if they, and which we hope that they will be shortly, then the claims for loss of income will gradually tail off over time. In terms of our corporate budgets, they're currently showing a break-even position. However, the usual areas where I tend to flag up on corporates are pressures and remain pressures. That is in terms of our yield from council tax during the course of the year, particularly as furlough tails off. We'll see what impact that has. Excuse me. Similarly, the impact of an uptake in people applying for council tax reduction scheme, and of course the pay award is still unresolved as we stand at the moment. So obviously remains a pressure for us depending on the outcomes of that. In terms of schools budgets, the credit balance is projected to be just under £4 million. Which is reduced from what we started the year with, but then again, we were expecting that because the reason that the credit balance was so high, as previously explained, was that we had funding allocated to us in the last financial year, which is now being spent by our schools. And in terms of the non-delegated schools budget, there's a small projected underspend of around about £124,000. The HRA business plan remains within all of our agreed parameters, as we've previously discussed. Appendix 2 to your report gives some context by service on the variances since the last month's report. The main area of movement was in that of education and children's services, where there's been an increase in cost there, which is primarily down to one of our usual reasons, which is an increase in residential costs. Turning to the capital projects, the significant major capital projects, the Queen's Building Schemes, a main contractor has now been appointed, and planning was approved by Planning Committee a couple of weeks ago. The new waste model remains on target and on budget. And the East Rail flood scheme, again, work progressing well on that. And again, it remains on target and on budget as things stand at the moment. So in terms of all of those major capital projects, there's nothing that needs to be flagged up at this point in time, Chair. One other area, you will remember that I added a verbal addition into my report last month in terms of a proposed redevelopment of the former library site in Prestatyn. In order, I brought it as an urgent verbal item last time in order that we could start the tender process. But I did say I would bring back the Strategic Investment Group business plan for this project, and just to confirm that the formal letting of the tender will come back to Cabinet as well in November, I think it is, for that. So again, that is just to give you the background on that recommendation that we took verbally last time in principle. So I think that's probably, as an introduction, all I needed to say at this point. Steve, is there anything I've missed out or you want to give more detail on, please?
The only thing I'd add is around the hardship fund, which I sort of briefly go into on page 114. And the claims that we're still going through the monthly process of expenditure claims and quarterly claims for loss of income. They're obviously smaller than last year. You'd expect that. However, also Welsh Government. So we're coming to the end of the sort of the original announcement of funding regime for the first 6 months of the year, and we've put in the claim for September. Now we've had draft guidance of some changes to what will be eligible. So it's sort of almost a slow sort of
weaning off.
weaning us off the grant funding help. That's a good way to put it, Jim. Yeah, I think and some of it's fair enough. I don't disagree with any of the principles in it. However, it might be that we're going to have to fund some stuff ourselves, which the Welsh Government generously have been funding up to now. So we just need to work through that and what impact that might have on services. I don't think it'll have a significant change in people's projections, but you might just see an uptick in some of the overspends or a decrease in some of the underspends in service areas as they're being asked to fund some of the pressures that are ongoing around COVID. I think the other thing just to mention more around the budget process, but you've seen in the media about the announcement of the 3-year funding announcement in the comprehensive spending review, which will be now announced in October instead of November. So this is, well, it's good news from a process point of view. I wouldn't want to second guess what's actually in the figures, but from a process point of view, it's really good news because what it means is that Welsh Government are now gearing up to hopefully give us 3-year indicative AEF figures. So won't probably go down to individual councils, but will hopefully give us some broad broad figures for what the overall revenue support grant will be over the next 3 years, as well as obviously the specific amount for next year. So that's really good, and hopefully we'll be bringing reports to Cabinet soon on that. I think that's all I've got to add, really, Julian. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, thank you all. Are there any comments or questions from Cabinet members?
The cam leader, just a couple, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll turn my camera off. Yeah, so obviously yourself, leader, and Julian been working on asking for long-term budgets for a long time. So that's good news and good work, because I know you've been bringing it up for a good couple of years. And just to Steve, obviously the accounts look good, but we have got what feels like the perfect storms for some members of our community. We've got the furlough finishing. We've got the universal credit reduction. I don't want to get into a massive political debate, but the knock-on of that could be people struggling to pay council tax, etc. So I'm sure it is in your mind. Can you just talk us through how that process will work, especially on setting the next council tax? Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, as far as the council tax, collection, etc., is concerned, and the wider economy, we're still monitoring that on a monthly basis with Welsh Government, and so we're all submitting monthly returns to Welsh Government and monitoring that closely. You're right, we might be in a almost the calm before another storm. So we've had the storm, we've had a little bit of calm, and we might be heading into more choppy waters. Really hard to predict. And obviously this week's news is probably it probably means we're at the peak worry about it. But we've got robust plans and processes in place. As you know, we're going through trying to collect all the pressures from services to make sure we've got everything that we need to inform the medium-term financial plan. I have to say it's quite hard until we get, as you know, most of our funding, 75% of our funding comes from Welsh Government through the revenue support grant, or aggregate external finance as it's called. And until we get some indication of what that is, it is very difficult to give figures, but we're building up the picture. I'll be candid and say that I'm hopeful that we will be able to set a balanced budget without any need for large savings or large cuts to the service. We are hoping for a reasonable revenue support grant settlement this year. And I think the fear is obviously at some point all the help that's going out, much needed help to businesses, to individuals on the recovery will need to be paid back at some point by the UK Treasury. And so I think we financially we're probably still in that calm for this year at least, and then things might hit. As far as the gas supplies, etc., we've got the intelligence around what we think the price increases are, so we're just doing some extra work on that this year, obviously this week, sorry. Obviously for office-based staff, for office-based costs, a lot of that has decreased anyway because of usage, so we hopefully we'll be able to reassign budgets rather than it's all going in as a pressure. But we'll take all that into account, as long as the pressures in social care, children's services, all those go into the pot, and that's what we'll be doing for the next 3 months, up until we get the draft settlement, and then hopefully propose a package to bring forward.
Okay, Mark. Yeah,
thanks for that. I feel better now, thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, quick couple of things. Again, without getting too political, that universal credit, the £20, it was given as a top up, the same as furlough grant, business grant schemes and everything else. So it's just dropping down back to the baseline. It's not taking it away. It was a COVID implementation figure that couldn't carry on forever. So that's that little bit. But a question to Steve, obviously it's good news on this 3-year budget settlement. that is good news, but you probably won't have the answer, but I'll ask the question. So you'll have a 3-year chunk of funding. Will there be any flex in there to swerve it between one financial year and another? That might sound foolhardy, but could there be some advantages to that, that you can use that 3-year set of figures to perhaps do something in year 2, but you're pulling it, let's say, out of year 3, if that makes sense?
It does make sense, Brian, and we have done that in the past. We have used cash in previous years to help in 1 year's setting of the budget, and actually we didn't know that what we were going to get the following year. So that was basically that. What that does is just carry forward the need to make that pressure. However, if we do have a 3-year figures where we know what we're getting from Welsh Government on the revenue support grant, then it does mean that we can flex more confidently around council tax levels, the use of cash, and the pressures that we may want to spend our money on. So it does give us the capacity to better manage our finances. What it doesn't mean is that over those 3 years, it doesn't necessarily mean that we'll be in a better position after those 3 years, but it does mean that we'll be able to balance those 3 years better. We might be able to make, and this is around the budget process, where to make savings, genuine cost reductions that don't impact on service delivery takes time, and it takes some big projects to deliver that, and that takes time to deliver. Now, it might mean that this 3-year settlements allow us to have savings in the 2nd and 3rd year that give us confidence that we can use some cash reserves in the 1st and 2nd year. So it allows us to hopefully plan a bit more long term than going from 1 year to the next and not knowing. So yes, is the short answer. It does give us some flexibility.
Good. That's good to hear that your thinking's in that domain. And of course, Steve, if it doesn't quite work out, we all know who to go to. Let's push for these 3-year settlements, don't we?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from Cabinet? No, okay. Meirig, please.
Diolch yn fawr, Sir Cadeirydd. Mae
Mr. Chairman, yes, gas and electricity, you drew your attention to that. That's frightening, isn't it? And obviously that will impact us as well with our offices and so on. I'm sure that the Treasury is looking into that. If I can turn to page 129, the new waste centre that we're building on Graig Road, the forecast expenditure has gone down to 2.03 million from 4.63 million. Anything to be said about that? And then turning to page 133, there's different information about the building, and it says in sustainable drainage, £68,000. Doesn't this building already have drainage that will take the foul water and the rainwater? I'm not quite understanding why we've got the sustainable drainage cost. One other question, please. On page 153, there's an image showing how it will look, but it's very high compared to what's on the left-hand side, which are the current flats, 3-storey flats. It's quite a bit smaller than what it shows in the photo. It looks overdeveloped to me, especially with gables like that. Thank you.
Julian or Steve, any comments on the questions? Mark, I can see you. Are you coming on the last question, Mark?
I think if Mark deals with the last
Yes,
two.
Mark can deal with the last one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Steve, the first two then, please.
No, I'm the first one, and if Mark does the second two, the page 133, the sustainable drainage one, and the page 153 on the question around the look, if Mark could deal with those two, and then I'll come back on the first one if that's okay.
Okay, Mark, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. So the first one, sustainable drainage. I mean, clearly the existing building on the site was built in the 60s when standards were different. And I think there's obviously with things like climate change and the risk of deluges and so on, the practice now is to try and provide attenuation on site so that in the event of a heavy rainfall, the stormwater drainage system doesn't get overburdened. So that's the reason why that's been included in the scheme. We also showed it separately from the other costs to make it clear that, that there are aspects of these capital projects now which are over and above those sort of construction costs which might have been incurred in previous years. The second question was about the appearance of the property. It is actually in the conservation area in Prestatyn, so we did take advice from the conservation team in terms of its appearance to ensure it was consistent and complemented the existing buildings in the area. The building next door is a block of council flats. It's Llys Bodnant. It's a 3-storey property. This new proposal is probably you call it 3.5 stories because there are 2 rooms in the sort of attic space. We had the opportunity to do that, and clearly it will provide 2 households with homes, which wouldn't otherwise have been the case if we just capped it at 3 stories. But the development does have planning permission, and its appearance was developed in conjunction with the conservation team, and they were entirely happy with it.
Thank you, Mark, for that.
Just before Steve answers on the other question, if I can just come in on the one, probably need to declare an interest in one respect, in that this proposed development is right opposite from the town from the Prestatyn Town Council offices, and I can say that the drains in that area are most assuredly not up to standard, seeing as the Town Council offices seem to flood on a base every time you get a little rain. So anything that can be done to improve that on the other side of the road would be greatly appreciated. The current ones don't meet requirements. And just to reinforce what Mark said in terms of the design, this has been done in consultation, and I'm also one of the ward members for this ward as well. So if I can, I don't often get to be parochial. A well-needed development.
Okay, is that it, Julian? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that was for that, and Steve got to pick up the other item.
Okay.
Yeah.
Steve,
Yeah.
the first...
Yeah, on page 129, the waste service remodelling. I mean, Julie might want to come in afterwards, just because I know he tends the board. But it's to do with obviously there's been a delay to the project, as there has with a lot of capital projects. But we're sort of picking up the pace on all of these projects now. We're still in the phase 1 enabling works phase, so that's around the groundworks, that sorts of thing, and we're yet to go out to tender to appoint the contract for the phase 2. So it's around the phasing of the spend, really. We're confident that all the spend will be incurred within grant guidelines, and the project is still on course. So yeah, I mean, there's strong governance arrangements in place around this project, including a project board, and they report regularly from a financial point of view, and obviously that's what you can see in that report. But there are no worries that I suppose there's always worries, concerns, but there's no major worries that this project won't be completed on time.
Thank you, Steve. That's clear.
I know Brian might want to come in, but just to reaffirm, I'm on projects of this size and complexity. There are always reprofiling of the spend patterns, and that has happened indeed on this project. But it is just to confirm that what I said in my introduction, that that there are no significant concerns about the the project being able to be delivered within the funding envelope which is available to us. I don't know whether Brian might want to add something more specific.
Yeah, thanks, Julian. Yeah, and in answer to Councillor Merrick Lloyd Davis's question, and Steve just mentioned it, we have these regular board meetings, waste board meetings, and there's a number of stakeholders as part of that board from across the council. I think we're on to board meeting number, it's up around the 50 mark now, Merrick. So the governance is in there, and the safety valve which Cabinet put in place many moons ago now, as long as the bottom line figure is showing a 500k saving on the project, we're carrying on moving forward with the project, and that figure that is still there on the books, if you like, that we are going to achieve that. From those days when Cabinet made that recommendation, and it was back in the days of the previous Section 151 officer, we have in fact expanded the project without going into too much detail, and it's more a business development project there now that's going to create lots of jobs, etc, etc. It's a much bigger project than what it was in 2018 when we first started talking about it. So the governance is there, the costs are being looked at constantly, all the elements around the project are getting reviewed on a monthly basis, and we're heading down to deliver that model in early 23. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that. Iawn, Meirig, wyt ti wedi cael atebion, wyt ti'n okay?
Well, maen nhw'n gymleth i hwn, deud y
Are you
gwir.
okay with those answers? Yeah, well, they're very complicated. What I was asking for, because the figure is reduced, forecast in year expenditure 2.103, the figures have changed since last time. Expenditure to date is 3.472 and has now gone up to 3.472. Estimated remaining spend 1.53 has come down from 4.23. And the future year's estimate has gone up from 1142 from 8, but the figure at the bottom is quite a lot less. I don't quite understand the figures. I'm sure that there is an explanation to how and why those figures have changed. I don't want to go into further detail on that now, but maybe Brian or Julian.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing to focus on is what the overall cost of the project is, and the overall cost of the project is still within the envelope that we were working with. All multi-year projects inevitably will have an element of reprofiling. We thought we'd spend X amount in year one, some of it will slip into year two, and so on. We obviously are in receipt of a significant amount of external grant funding, which has its own conditions with regards to that. So sometimes we have to spend grant funding first before we spend our own funding on projects and the like. So as I say, the reprofiling has taken place and probably will take place again going forward. But I think we need to just focus on what the actual bottom line is for the cost of the project over the 3 or 4 years, however long it's actually been, as to how much the overall cost of the project is.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
clear. I don't want to go into this, Brian. Did you just want to?
Yeah, just a quick one then, which hopefully will be some comfort to Merrick. I'm pushing Merrick for either a members' workshop or a full council briefing on the new waste model, and that's the sort of questions that we can answer on the day. I think Julian has answered it really, because I'm close to it. I fully understand what Julian said there, but by the same token, appreciate that to you from half a step away, it doesn't make sense. So the word reprofiling, if you can accept that, that's what it's that's what it's all about, what it's contained in. And if we can get this council members briefing, council members, full council briefing, whatever shape it might take, we can have everyone there relevant to the project from the officer's side that can rattle out these answers for you in greater detail, Merrick. Thank you, Lee.
That's good.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Diolch yn fawr.
Okay,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Can you come to the recommendation, please?
Yep, by all means. 3.1, the members note the budgets set for 21-22 and progress against the agreed strategy. And 3.2, the members approve the business case for the development of the former Prestatyn library site as recommended by Strategic Investment Group as per section 6.7 and appendices 5 and 6.
Okay, that's been moved. Someone second that? Mark has seconded that. Is everybody in agreement with the recommendation? Nobody against? Okay, that's been moved. Thank you. We'll move swiftly on to agenda item 10. Gary, please, could you take us through this?
Yes, just to inform members of a couple of changes to the forward work programme since it was published. The October agenda, I'm informed that the 2 reports at the top of there, 1 and 2, the replacement LDP reports, have been asked to be removed from the October agenda. I don't have yet a replacement date for those. We're awaiting a replacement date. And then the only other change is in December, we've been asked to move the Prestatyn Flood Defence Scheme report from December to January. So it will appear on the forward work programme for the 18th of January.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Are there any comments on that? No. Okay, thank you. Right, we want to move to part 2. Will someone propose that we move to part 2, please?
I propose.
Okay, we'll wait a couple of minutes while we